Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello and welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini. As always, I'm joined by my colleague and fellow Maple Leaf writer over at the Hockey Writers, Jim Parsons. Jim, it's been a couple of weeks. Obviously, the lull of the offseason, not a whole lot to talk about in Leafland, but we actually have some news. But before we get into that, how have you been?
I've been good. I've been busy. I just got back from a vacation. Took my family to the lake and did some golfing. And so I'm kind of back into the grind, even though there's not a lot to grind about. There's not a whole bunch going on here. But yeah, we do have a couple topics that we're going to touch on today. So I'm eager to get into it.
Awesome. Glad you had a great time and that you soaked up the sun on the lake. And I just got to ask, how was your golf score?
It was really bad. This sounds terrible. I'm actually a decent golfer. Like, I tried to go to college to play when I was younger, and I wasn't good enough to get a scholarship, but I'm a decent golfer, but I did not play well. I don't know if it was the soda pops that I was having or the fact that I really didn't care about the golf or what, but it wasn't good. But, hey, I always say playing golf at your worst is almost better than anything else I could do. So I don't get too upset about it, right? So
there you go. Hopefully next time you bounce back, and that's the main important thing.
There you go.
As you mentioned, and as I mentioned off the top, a couple of Leaf news and points to get into. The biggest one kind of came out of nowhere, where nobody was expecting this, where the Maple Leafs signed goaltender Martin Jones to a 1-year contract worth $875,000. Obviously, not a whole lot, but given where the Maple Leafs were heading with their goaltending situation, it seemed like Samsonov was going to be the number one. Woll was going to be the backup. Murray was put in LTIR. What do you make of this signing? Because again, it just kind of came out of the blue.
I think nothing changes. Realistically, I believe that the Maple Leafs probably wanted some insurance. They wanted a backup option that was a veteran, somebody who probably wasn't getting picked up by anybody else. He had a decent run with San Jose. I mean, the team, or not San Jose, but he played for
Kraken.
Kraken. Thank you very much. I was drawing a blank there. He had a really good record with the Kraken as the team, but his numbers weren't good. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things where I think they thought, I don't know if anybody's going to pick him up. Maybe we can get him. We'll have a veteran here. But I don't think it changes anything. Like, I don't believe that they really have a spot for him or that they're going to do much with him. I think they believe he's probably going to clear waivers when they need to do that. And then they'll be able to call him up in the event of an injury or if Joseph Woll struggles or whatever the case is. So I still think it's Samsonov 1. I think it's Joseph Woll 2. And then if Martin Jones does clear waivers and is available to them, then they'll use him if they need to. Otherwise, he's just going to be an expensive option in the AHL.
Yeah, I was a little bit perplexed by that because, like you mentioned, he did have, great record last season with the Kraken. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And you look at everything, his numbers have it was at 27 wins, 13 losses, three overtime losses. Not bad actually, but the 887 save percentage, the 2.95 goals against average is okay, but not ideal. And it just kind of seemed like the way that Samsonov was going, the way that Woll was going, it didn't quite make sense on how everything was going to work out. And he hasn't had a winning record since 2018-19 when he last had 36 wins. Or 4 consecutive 30 win seasons with the Sharks, 37, 35, 30, and 36. But yeah, I do think that this is something that it may be a non-issue because of the fact that they are pretty set on Woll and Samsonov as a tandem. But you look at the history that they've had with third string goaltenders, and it really hasn't been that great. I mean, there was a whole David Riddick acquisition during the bubble. They really tried to address that situation in the past, and they really struggled to find a third goaltender capable of coming in should they need them, because they've had injuries, they've had inconsistencies, and I think Jones kind of serves as that backup. But before we get into anything else, or like my next point for this Jones conversation is, and I think he kind of touched up on it, would this really create any sort of goalie controversy between Woll and Jones, because they may have that, or is it just going to be that backup plan if Woll shows that inexperience despite the small sample that he has?
Yeah, no, it changes nothing unless Woll doesn't play well, right? And that's why they didn't sign an inexperienced goaltender, because they already have one in Joseph Woll, right? So you've got Samsonov, who's still, relatively speaking to a lot of other goaltenders, hasn't played a whole lot, but Joseph Woll has played much less than that. And they are counting on him probably to play, 25, 30 games. And if he can't do that, if for whatever reason he's not capable of that, then you can go to Martin Jones, because Martin Jones has been there. He's done that. He had a good start when he was in San Jose, which is why I said that earlier. So he played well to the point where it doesn't look so great over the last few seasons, but he's the guy that you can probably go to and say, well, we have Martin Jones if we need him, right? So I think that's what it is. This is. It's kind of like, okay, what happens if Joseph Woll, who we have a lot of faith in, who we believe will be that guy who we're confident in, doesn't do what we're hoping he will do, then what, right? And so then you need the stability of a Martin Jones, even if he doesn't necessarily have the game left to prove that that was the right decision. At least you've got that sort of confidence in the fact that he's been around, he's done it, he's played pretty well at times. You can call on him if you need to, but if they don't need to, I don't think we ever see Martin Jones. Like, I honestly believe if Samsonov plays pretty good and he does this again like he did last year and plays more games, but he plays well in those games, and if Joseph Woll is capable of what they think he can probably do, I don't think you see Martin Jones. I think the only other way that you'd see him is if there's an injury, right? I think, and then you have that backup experience, the veteran guy, to do that. I'm still not sure that he's even going to clear waivers. I think the $875,000 might be a little rich for some people, because you can probably find a cheaper goaltender out there. So maybe you don't claim him, especially the way that his numbers rolled out for Seattle last year. But it's very possible in October, which is what I believe they'll probably put him on waivers, that he doesn't get through it. And so then they're starting right back at trying to figure out who they're going to get for a third stringer. So yeah, I don't anticipate seeing Martin Jones in a Maple Leafs uniform, unless there's an injury or Joseph Woll just doesn't play very well.
Yeah, I think that if he does go on waivers, which everyone seems to be the likely, or everyone's saying it's going to be the likely scenario, I don't think he'll stay there very long, because it's that 1 year, because it's under $1 million. It's great value for, a veteran goaltender like him that has had some success in regular season and could try and create that stability. But again, yeah, the waiver issue is what's not throwing me, but it's what's saying to me that they're saying that this is Woll's chance, that he needs to stick with this team. Otherwise, he's going to be sent down and he could possibly be picked off waivers. So I think that they're willing to risk losing Martin Jones as opposed to Joseph Woll, because Joseph Woll does have the capability to potentially be a starter if he gets those more opportunities, if he shows consistency and he's ready for that starter role in the near future, because he is 25. You don't know if he's necessarily going to reach that at this point, but it still remains. I think that they rather lose Martin Jones at this point than Joseph Woll, because if another team picks him up and he becomes a starter and he goes on this, massive run and streaks of putting up great numbers, great save percentages, and getting his team wins, then that's going to look bad for the Maple Leafs, who has struggled to find in regards to drafting and developing their own talent in net. So I think that because of this is the signal that, we don't want to lose Woll. We'd rather lose this guy as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, my guess is if you had to choose and you put Joseph Woll on waivers, there's like an 85% chance you're losing that guy.
Yeah.
If you put Martin Jones on waivers, there might be a 25% chance you're losing that guy. So I think they probably figure that Jones will clear. He might not, but if he does, then they're right. They're right where they started with this. I don't know that there was a huge market for Jones, to be honest, because it took a long time for him to even get
he
this
signed
deal.
It right now in August. Yeah.
Right. Like he was one of the last signings, one of the most recent of what we've seen here in the late little, since the UFA opened. So, I don't know there's a huge market for him.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the signings in terms of players, according to Cap Friendly, Easton Cowan, which we'll be getting to very shortly, Caleb Jones and Pia Suter. And not, again, this is more like all the depth signings. All the big name free agents are gone. These are players that, can fill out the depth, are like going to be the second or third string tier goaltenders if they do sign. And that's the case with Martin Jones right now, where if a team really wanted him and had the faith in him, he would have signed a long-term extension, but I think he knows what's at stake right now, where he's going to be in terms of a lineup situation. And knowing the Kraken, they probably have the lineup with Grubauer, Drieger, Joey Decord they already got a backlog in there. So they might as well say, hey, who are we willing to give up? Really not going to trade Grubauer at any point, because he did start to turn things around. And then you're left with Drieger and Jones. And I think that despite the record, Jones's numbers weren't that great. And I think you want to go back to Drieger, who did show some promise before he became a Kraken as well. But yeah, interesting scenario and interesting signing. One or two things can happen. Either he's still going to be a Maple Leaf or he isn't. And everyone looking online, it's just like you said, like I'm going to say right now, it's a safeguard. It's the plan B or C option that they hope can still happen, because then you can have that goaltender that could come in. There's an injury. Goaltenders aren't playing up to standard. So they might as well just take a shot at that and hope for the best.
Yeah. You have to think from his perspective, he signed this deal with three options in mind. One, he's not hoping, but his only opportunity is going to come with an injury. Two, he doesn't have a clue where he's going to play, because if he goes in waivers and he's claimed, he could be anywhere. And three, he's going to play for the AHL team. Like, those are the things he knew going into this contract signing. So if you're comfortable with that, then you're kind of just throwing it to the wind here and going, well, I just want to work somewhere, right? Like, that's what he's thinking when he signs this deal. So I don't think he's probably been promised or guaranteed anything for the Maple Leafs. I don't think he's coming into this thinking he's going to be in the Maple Leafs uniform at some point. Like, I just think he's kind of going, well, I'll land somewhere, right? So we'll see where that is in October.
So as we mentioned, as I pointed the question off, does it create competition? Both of us are saying no, it doesn't move the needle on anything. It's just, it is what it is at this point. But you know what? I do hope that Jones can bounce back, because looking at him in San Jose, when they believe he was still with the Kings when they acquired him and made that trade, I think it was part of that whole Lucic whole trade scenario where kind of like a 3-team. I'm going to have to go back on that and research on that, because it was just like so many moving parts. But Jones looked like a capable starter, and it just kind of fell off. Obviously, the Sharks had some hiccups here and there. They started to decline, and then he went to the Philadelphia Flyers. Didn't quite help his case out, but hopefully this resurgence helps him and gives him that confidence that he can still play in this league.
Yeah, he started out really strong, but he hasn't been all that great in the last little bit. So you never know. Maybe he's got it in him still.
Absolutely. And as we get into the second part of our show, here's a quick word from the hockey writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
And we are back. And as we talked about at the beginning of the show, we talked about the Martin Jones news and the signing, but there's also one more key piece of information that came out about 2-3 days ago, and that is the signing of Maple Leafs first round pick in 2023, Easton Cowan. Believe it is a standard ELC contract, $935,000 for the next 3 years. Jim, considering how there's a lot of shock and awe about the selection, what do you make, or did you foresee this happening this quickly with Easton Cowan and his ELC?
You know what? I don't put too much stock into when these guys sign their entry level contracts, because some sign it like the next day, some don't sign it for a while. Connor Bedard signed it on his birthday. Like, there's really no rhyme or reason to when these guys get this stuff figured out with the team. So I don't I don't put a whole lot of stock into when this was signed and how early this was signed and how much a priority the Maple Leafs made it. I don't think it changes anything in terms of his trajectory or what they plan on doing with him. The fact that they signed this, fairly quickly, I don't think that changes what their plan for him is in the next couple of years. I don't think we're going to see him in Toronto for a while. I think he's going back to the London Knights. I think that's probably the plan, always was the plan, even with this entry level deal. That's still the plan. And I know that you're going to ask about his development camp and stuff like that, but I still don't think that changes anything. I think this is just kind of, they got it done. It's cool. Great. They wanted it done, and now they go on from here. But no, I don't put too much stock into when this got signed.
Yeah, it again, kind of like the Jones thing. It came out of the blue, but it brought up the notion of when was he going to sign? Were they going to try and wait it out 1 year to see what he can do in London? But I guess what happened during the development camp, I guess they must have been impressed. And yeah, he is going back to London. There's no doubt that he's probably going to he's going to look towards tearing up the league, putting up a lot of points, and being a go-to player for the Knights. The Hunters, they don't give players the responsibility or the limelight in order to produce and be a key player in their system if they didn't feel that player was ready. And Easton Cowan is definitely one of those players that could shine for the London Knights this year as a big time leader and big time point producer. And I keep on saying this. I think he's going to have, a very standout season where maybe I kind of look towards Luke Evangelista as a comparable, not in terms of play style and everything, but in terms of the projection. He had sort of like a 50, 60 point season in his draft year, popped off right after that, going 100 points. Now, Cowan may hit 100 points, who knows? But if he gets a point total 80 or higher, I think you're looking at that as a big win and a big step for his development, because the Maple Leafs love his energy and his grind. And before we get into that, or before we end off the show quickly, what expectations are you set, or are you looking for Cowan heading into his draft year +1 season?
Well, I think you mentioned it, just like they want him to go back to London and they want him to dominate, because he basically exploded in the second half of that year. In the first half, he made a name for himself in the second half, which is why Toronto took him. And I think part of the reason that they signed this entry-level contract this quickly was because they wanted to know that they're confident in the selection. Yes, they went off the board a little bit. They did say at the draft, we knew some teams behind us had this guy high on the list. This is the guy we wanted. So I think this is all part and parcel of that. They think signing this entry-level deal is probably them saying, look, we are comfortable with the pick we made. We like this kid. We plan on using him as a long-term we're going to invest the time and everything that we need to in him. He's going to London and we want him to dominate there. They want to see what they saw in the second half of the season all year long. And so if he's able to do that and he really takes that next step, development camp was great. What he did in the second half of last year was great. If he can continue to take those, I don't know if you call them baby steps or just the next step, then they know they've got this kid who in a couple years time, when they're ready, or they can give them this, to me, I wouldn't even give him a sniff of the 9 games this season.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense at all. Just tell this kid, you're going back to London. We're going to watch you closely. Go and dominate that league like you did the second half of the season, and we'll keep up with you and we'll talk to you then. But yes, you're not getting a sniff of the NHL yet. Don't set any expectations. Yes, he's already learning in development camp what it's like to become pro a little bit and stuff like that. He doesn't need it yet. He's not there. He's not going to be playing in the NHL. So send him back, let him dominate, watch him closely, and then everybody can get excited about how well he's playing, right? And you've got this kid in a year or two that you can look at it again, and then the 2 seasons time, you get oh, maybe he's getting there, maybe he's ready. And you just don't rush kids like this into the league. And I think this is that prospect. He's going to be very good in the London system, and then as he moves into the AHL, he's going to be a guy to watch, and you just gradually work him towards the lineup. But don't give any sniffs or any indication at this point that there's anything more than just going back to that league and doing really well.
And I just want to point out to the comment section, because they're going to say we're setting lofty expectations. No, we are not. That is the big thing right here. Yeah, you nailed it on the head right there. I think that, he got that sniff of what it's like to be at a major camp with the Maple Leafs. And considering that there were prospects ahead of him and older than him, he really held his own. And I think that's what maybe the Maple Leafs said. Obviously, there is no timeline for a contract or to sign that ELC, like you said, but I think they're really comfortable in doing so at that point because he was a major standout. He was one of their top players heading in, and he shined like one. Same with Fraser Minton, Topi Niemela, like all their top players were their best players during camp, and that was a big sign. And I also wonder too, because he gets that RFA status in 26, 27, and that's right around the time where, they may need to see some of these players start to come up. And obviously he's not making next season, or the season after that, because internal competition where they project him to be in the lineup, it's not going to happen. But in that time frame, in 3 years, maybe they could still give him another contract to be like, hey, we can still give you sort of that league minimum, continue to prove to us that you are worth signing, and worth the time and investment. And if he continues to do that, that's going to be huge. And I think that works to their advantage because of how close they are to the cap. Plus, you have to worry about Matthews in the future, Nylander, and everybody else. So I think when you have those sort of prospects coming up, you want them to still maintain a decent level of salary before anything else, and you take care of the stars. And that's still a big talking point right now, where Matthews still needs to sign, Nylander still needs to sign his contract. But I think that helps them out in the long run because they still need those players coming off ELCs or signing those post entry level contracts. They're going to help them big time, and he's going to create good value for them.
Yeah, there's going to be a time for him. It's just not anywhere soon, right? He's going to be the kind of player that you're going to have to really, the fan base is going to call for him to come up, right? And I believe Toronto's not even going to look at it, right? Until he makes that argument so strongly that you have to kind of go, well, maybe he can get a game. He's going to play so well down there for a while before they even sniff at bringing him anywhere. So yeah. I think that's going to have to continue to the point where fans are frustrated. I believe that's probably what will happen in a few seasons time. Fans will be frustrated that he has not played an NHL game because he's playing so well in the other leagues that he's in. And then you're like, okay, this is the ideal situation for us, right? We've got this kid down there who's really shining, and now we can maybe we'll look at them, right? That's what you want. That's what you want. You want these prospects to be so good in the leagues that they're supposed to be in at the age that they're at, that they give you no choice when the time is ready to go. Maybe we should give this kid a look, right? But until then, there's absolutely no reason to rush this at all. And he gets it. He knows. I mean, he's undersized. He's got to put more weight on, all the things that come with it. Yeah, he's super aggressive and he plays in your face and he's got a lot of skill, but he's still got to grow into his frame. He's got to get bigger. He's got to get stronger. There's a lot that he needs to do before he's ever ready. Even if development camp was great, that's what you want. There's a lot of these kids come into development camp and really shine, but they're not anywhere close to being ready. So there's still time to go here.
And let's not forget that just last season, he was playing in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, and then he gets a call up with 7 games, 2 points in that span. And this was his first full OHL season, and he was third in rookie scoring behind Michael Misa and Beckett Seneca. So yeah, he may have been a little bit older in that regard, but still as a rookie. And I think there was also, let's not forget that maybe the pandemic may have still played a factor in that because there was no OHL season. He probably would, again, he's probably one of those players where maybe the development didn't quite work out, but he's starting to prove his worth right now and showing that, he's maintaining that projection, that development, and that he's going to be on track too. So big standout season for him as a rookie skater. Like I said before, I'm expecting another strong performance from him. And usually in the case when rookie skaters are dominant in their rookie year, most of the time they do shine in their sophomore season. There's rarely any sophomore slump. They take that big step and leap forward. And I do think that knowing Cowan's work ethic, his mindset, and his determination and his ability to give 110% every single shift, I think he'll do just that in a sophomore season.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to like about this kid. Just give it time. Don't rush it.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing that you don't want to do for any prospect. And that about sums it up for this episode of the Maple Leafs Lounge. A little bit shorter than usual, but we still got a lot of information and a lot of dialogue for this episode in regards to Martin Jones and Easton Cowan. That is it, and all the time that we have for this episode. Be sure to check out the Hockey Writers and all the terrific content from our great writing staff over there. For Jim Parsons, I'm Peter Baracchini. We'll see you next time on the Maple Leafs Lounge.